Dr. Gia, and this is Stories of Hope. I am here to brief you a little bit on what's coming up next. So, we had recorded the interview with Zemi and myself on her story Through Motherlessness, and due to some technical difficulties, we don't have the full recording. So the content we decided was so valuable and it was really so good that we did not want to toss it out and start over. So what we have done is we have improvised and we are bringing to you the content with some pictures and some clips from the video, but we know that you are still going to get so much from it, whether it is you who are experiencing motherlessness or you are just learning to become more aware of the issues or, let's say, the story that some person told. And so I want you to just stay tuned. It's going to be featured right now, Zemi's story Through Motherlessness. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Gia, and welcome to this episode of Stories of Hope. This week, as we do every week, we have a treat for you. We have Zemi, who will be talking to us about hope through motherlessness. Now, that may sound like something you've never heard before, and that's intentional, so that you can hear from her not only what that means, but what that has meant for her. So join us as we welcome Zemi to the show. Welcome, Zemi.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have done the introduction, and I think I started that introduction with the word motherlessness, which, to be honest, I don't think that I have heard anyone use it until I met you. So I think that's a good place to jump in as you tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay, so I guess you mean the way I use the term
Yes.
motherlessness as a state. So I think it is actually a state of being. Losing my mother at age 12 totally shaped my identity as a woman because I was so close to her and because of the different things that I learned through her death about the role of a mother and their covering, etc. So I have walked out 14 years of motherlessness. The first, I would say 11 or 12 of them, I was in and out of periods of grief. I, in a sense, did not bury my mother until about 2 or 3 years ago. And so coming now, what I call the other side of grief is when you enter into, I can see the reason for this. Even though it was heartbreaking, I see the purpose in this. I see who I am through this. I see what I can do through this, which is help people who are walking through loss, whether it be the loss of a mother, the loss of a friend, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, because they're interconnected, and what connects them all is that feeling of loss and that pain that you experience through each of those experiences.
So you said you buried your mother 2 years ago. Now, I know what you mean because I've heard your story, but I don't think everyone would fully understand what that means. Can you share?
Well, for me, it means this. When I was 12 years old, our family, for whatever reason, they didn't want to go through the dramatics of seeing like these 3 children crying over the body going down in the casket. They decided to send us to the limousine to instead of going through that event. And so I never watched my mommy's body go down.
Okay.
And I think that action itself is such a huge part of the process because in a sense you are letting things go down, you're closing it, this is final, this is something that is and will evermore shall be. But because I didn't see that, in my mind, I think a door was opened. And so, in a sense, I never buried her emotionally, mentally. I would keep reliving the death. I would keep reliving all these different feelings surrounding the death. And so she stayed unburied in my life, in my heart, in my mind. And I grieve for her as if she had just died year after year after year. And that's a very, very unhealthy place to be, especially for such a long period of time.
So what do you mean that you just continue to grieve? I mean, because what's the difference between someone who may have seen their significant other, whomever that is that they've lost, actually be buried, and you who didn't, from your perspective?
Well, I think what is the difference is there's a closed door on that event.
Okay.
So maybe, in a sense, like turning the page. Whereas for me, I kept reading the page or
Wow.
going back to previous pages to
Okay.
reread those pages and sometimes add more details to those pages. For others, they can turn the page and sometimes even close the book, and they may revisit certain areas, but they have moved on from that page essentially.
Okay.
But I was stuck
Okay.
on a particular page and going backwards and not forwards.
Okay. So I met you about, I want to say 2 years ago, but I think it must be more than that.
It was 20. I came home January 1st, 2014.
Okay.
And actually, the way we met, the bank I was at dissolved, and they
Yes.
offered these counseling classes, and I wanted to go with someone atypical, so I picked you, and that's how I got there. So it would have been in 2014.
Yeah. And I think at that point, she has to come on Stories of Hope. So, for those of you who did not get to see Zemi's Facebook Live video, we're going to talk a little bit about what it was she was doing or what she was saying, because November represented the 14th year anniversary that your mom had died. And you did this amazing thing where you shared these 14 lessons you learned over the 14 years. Now, we don't have time to talk about the entire 14, but I want you to pick out the ones that you think are worthwhile sharing in this forum.
Okay, well, I think number one, and it was number one, was time does not heal. And that's such a typical thing that you hear, oh, time heals all wounds, etc. But it really doesn't. You know, over time you learn how to deal with your pain, but time doesn't heal your pain. That's like saying time is healing a wound. No, your body is healing the wound, or the things that you're doing, the way that your body naturally fights is healing the wound, but time itself isn't healing the wound. And point number two was only God can heal you. Because there were parts of me that I didn't even know were broken. That one day I woke up and I was like, wow, I am free of this. And I didn't even really know how it was hindering me in my everyday life. And I was like, only God can do that. To get to the very deep, deep parts of you and fix things that A, you didn't know were broken, and two, you wouldn't know how to fix if you could. So I think they are the top ones. Like, time doesn't heal, and only God can heal you.
And those are pretty profound. In
Yeah.
fact, all of your 14 were pretty profound in the way that you shared it, and they all interconnected. I'm thinking of the one that struck me was, and I'm going to botch up how you said it, but really it was more about the fact that, yes, you are living the legacy of the person who you lost, but at the same time, you have to pretty much create your own.
Exactly. So I lost mommy at 12, like I said, and having a unique name, I always felt I had to represent myself a certain way and make her proud and her legacy proud, because as a nurse, she did so much in the community and she was so involved. And even people today say, oh, your mommy did this for me and she was this for me. So I wanted to live up to her legacy and make her proud. So I spent many, many years doing that. And that's all good and well. It's fine. It's great to bring honor to your family's name. But at the same time, you have to get to a point where you say, okay, I did that. I made her proud. In my case, it was, I'm a woman now. So what do I do for me? How do I want to live? What kind of legacy do I want to create? I made her proud. I've done my service. Now what do I do for me? And I think sometimes we get lost in that. Let me keep doing this to make her proud and this and that. And we always forget about us.
Okay.
We forget to focus on us and what we're doing, because we have a life and a legacy to create as well.
So you lose yourself in the person who you lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Any other ones that stick out?
There was, I think it was number 14, that your mother serves as a covering.
That was really good.
A lot of people don't, and even I didn't realize this, when mommy died, I remember, I was always friendly, I always had friends of both sexes and stuff, but when she died, if I had a friend or if I spoke to somebody, oh, she fast, and I was doing very well in school, and all of a sudden all these things coming at me, and if your mommy was there, number one, they probably wouldn't say these things because they wouldn't even really be focusing on you that intently. But since she's not there and she's not blocking these things, all of them come to you and they impact you, especially living in such a small community. I didn't know if I said it. I'm from Eleuthera, a very, very small town, Berkeley town. And also I have a friend who we grew up together. Her mommy always encouraged us to dress up, and so she died in 2012, and her youngest daughter was about 11. And so they would always scrutinize her based on her shape and what she had on. And I was like, I know if her mommy was alive, she wouldn't feel that way. Like, she would encourage her to take pride in herself. She wouldn't be hiding her. And that's just a way that your mother serves as a covering, and she protects you from either having to grow up too fast, or people kind of trying to put you in a box of things that they want you to be, or protecting you from these boys who may not even be interested. So all of that, I think your mommy serves as a covering, and that's why some fathers or people on the outside looking in don't really understand what you lose when you lose your mother, because you lose so much more than just this person who may have provided for you or talked to you. You lose this person who actually protected you from these missiles, I guess, that you didn't even know were coming your way. You couldn't even fathom that you had to protect yourself from those things.
That's so interesting. I've never, ever, ever thought about it like that until you mentioned it, and it was like, I think I've seen it happen where,
Exactly, yeah.
mommy was not present, and then all of a sudden it was a lot of focus on the girl child in particular. And I don't know if it was that case with you and a brother, if it was more directed on you and your sister as compared to him.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, and you don't have to go into too much detail, but so we talked about these lessons that you have learned, and you lightly brushed over, the years, pretty much 12 years where you were reliving. What were some things there that you now recognize that were unhealthy, things that may have been cycles that were tied to it? Now, of course, all of this so that there's somebody who's listening, may be able to identify this pattern, may not know why this keeps happening to me or why I'm doing this, and can actually see the connection.
I think, and this is, it's one of those things, it's a thin line.
Okay.
We attach this experience to different days.
Okay.
So if you can limit the amount of time that you attach to that experience, the better off you will be in terms of reliving everything.
Wow.
For some people, if they lost someone on December 5th, for them the whole of December is ruined.
Okay.
So if you can isolate that to as close to December 5th as possible, you have a shorter time span of being in that depressive state.
Okay.
So I lost my mom. It's American Thanksgiving. We kind of celebrated, and actually the night before we were hosting. I think it was one of those Bahamas meet and greets where they have tourists come in and you host the family and etc. So I have always associated it with Thanksgiving. And then when I went to school in Canada, they celebrate Thanksgiving in October. So I didn't realize that I had made this association between Thanksgiving.
Wow.
So October comes and there's all this Thanksgiving excitement, and I stay in this state of tenseness and depression from October straight through to November, and then I can't get out of it. I can't get my grades back up. I can't get my sleep cycle back. So I totally messed up the whole fall semester. And then those feelings and anxiety translates into the next semester. So when I realized that I had this seasonal depression, but I still couldn't get myself out of it, I was like, okay, I recognize this, but what do I do? And so that was, you come to the state of consciousness, and then you have to slowly walk through it and see what works this year, what doesn't work this year. And that took me a while to really understand my patterns and what to do and what not to do. Because what I would like to do was sit down and make my whatever guy I was dating at the time understand my pain, read what I'd written about that day. Hey, this is how I feel, this is what I went through, comfort me. But that's not his job, that's not his responsibility. So when I recommitted my life to Christ, I learned that a man isn't responsible for the things that he didn't break, and even the things that he has broken in you. Sometimes he's not responsible for fixing those things either.
That's good.
You go to God on those things and you work through them based on what God shows you. And so that was a key lesson for me, that I can't make him suffer because of all of the things that I'm going through. And actually, even after I had this realization, I remember I moved back home, and then one year I just was hit really hard. I think it may have been last year or the year before that.
Okay.
I was hit really hard with the same cycle of depression, and I couldn't understand it. I was like, I'm at peace now. I feel like I've buried her. What happened? And that's when I actually called you again, because I wanted to sit with you and walk through what I was going through. And so I think that's another thing too. I think we need to learn to communicate. You probably know personally that me having sessions with you, whether it was 4 or 5, um, it really helped in my progression to wholeness. And I think a big part of that is not only your education, but also your beliefs outside of your profession that translate through your work. So I think if you seek a professional, make sure that their beliefs outside of their education line up with your beliefs.
So Zemi just gonna give me a shout out. But thank you. So we can switch gears a little bit because you talked about my beliefs outside, and one of the things that I hold true to, and I talk about it when I share my introduction, and if you go in anything that I talk about, it's always about resilience and it's about hope.
Hope for me is what I hope to do for others.
Thank you so much for being with us for this first part of the talk with Zemi as we walked her through the journey of hope through motherlessness. I want you to stay tuned.